Hey, we're back with one more episode of Common Knowledge for the week, where I rate 10 common Magic the Gathering cards and tell you if any of them are good in the Pauper format or not. That's just kind of what we do around here. I have fixed, if you watched yesterday, I'm sorry, the things were all stretched out. Might have happened on the day before, too. But we fixed that. I don't know. I don't know why the windows work like this, but we got it fixed. That's the important part. And we will start our journey today on this fine Friday with Rune Snag. Rune Snag is 1 and a blue for an instant. Counter target spell unless his controller pays 2, plus an additional 2 for each card named Rune Snag in your graveyard. Interesting. Interesting. Well, let's think about our counter spells here, shall we? We know the good ones, right? We got actual factual counter spell. Hard to beat that one. We got something like Spell Pierce that can do non-creature spells and has counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays. Is it non-creature? Yeah, it's non-creature. It's not just instant or sorcery. So you have that. It costs a single mana. It still makes the opponent pay 2. It doesn't get this additional stuff, but that's okay. We play that one a lot because it's very cheap and very easy to play. You'll see more specific ones like Dispel or Envelop that will be able to counter instance and or source or instance in one instant and instance rather, and sorceries in another instance. So those cards also have very specific things. You see something like Abjure that makes you sacrifice a blue creature, might just be blue permanent. And then you get to counter a spell for a single mana. So there's a lot of stuff. The one that you are going to look at the most when you're comparing a card like this and another card, thinking like which one should go in the deck here, or which set I guess should go in the deck, should be Mana Leak. Mana Leak is 2 mana, counter target spell unless the controller pays 3. So Mana Leak on its own is just better than Rune Snag, but Rune Snag has the potential of being better than Mana Leak because, if you have multiple copies in your graveyard, now this thing becomes a more difficult counter spell because it's going to require the opponent to pay 2 and then an additional 2 and then potentially even an additional 2. 2 mana to stop their spell unless they pay 6. Yeah, you might be able to get away with something like that. I think just the opportunity cost, though, is a little too high. Especially in a format like Pauper where you have all those other really good counter spells that you play, and you'll probably have if you're playing a deck that needs to have so many counter spells in it, you're probably already going to be playing all those really good counter spells that I mentioned. So if you do need another form of, I just need a few more counter spells to go in the deck to round this thing out. Are you going to pick Rune Snag, which really wants you to play 4 copies of this thing to get all the best value out of it? Or are you going to play, a single copy or a couple copies of Mana Leak that will just be generically good cards whenever you need them? And you're probably going to play Mana Leak, and you're probably not going to play either of them, is the real thing. You're good with your 4 counter spells. You might have a few Spell Pierce. You might have a couple of Dispel and Envelop in the sideboard ready to go. What's the artifact one? It counters target artifact or element or enchantment spell. Forgetting that one entirely. It's in my deck. I have a deck that plays it from Mirrodin. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. We have other counter spells that are just better than this. This does have some interesting ideas to it. I do like the Muscle Burst or Relentless Agony. Is that what it's called? Relentless Aggression? No, don't worry about it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I'm thinking of. There's a red card. It's in standard right now, in fact. But ancestral? No, doesn't matter. This is not pertinent to what I'm talking about. It's nice to have some of these cards that say, hey, if you're playing more of them, you get bonuses. I like that as an idea. But we're in a format where you really get to just pick from the cream of the crop, and this one just isn't in comparison to some of the other ones we got. So I will give this a 3, just a 3, which is not a bad score, but it could be better, especially when it's a counterspell. Counterspells are good cards, and so for one to get a 3, it can't be that great, right? Skitter Eel is nightmare fuel. Look at this thing. 3 and a blue for a 3/3 fish crab with adapt. You can pay 2 and a blue, and if this creature has no +1/+1 counters on it, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. So a 4 mana 3/3 that can end up being a 7 mana 5/5. With no other abilities, huh? No, I'm okay. This is the format with Tolarian Terror. What if you had a 1 mana 5/5? I would just play that one instead if it were me. We'll give this a 1.6. Yeah, 1.6. Just too expensive all around. I mean, no, that's a little unfair. I think I've given Hill Giants better. Hill Giants are worse than Grizzly Bears, in my opinion. I feel pretty confident in saying that. So if I gave like a Hill Giant, and I know I've done Hill Giant on the show before. I think I gave Hill Giant like a 1.8, maybe something like that. This is better than a Hill Giant. We'll give it a 1.9, but still, it's splitting really terrible hairs there. Tangle Mantis 2 and double green for a 3/4 insect with trample. Yeah, okay. 4 mana 3/4 trample. Is that anything? I'm not sure that it is. You want your green beaters to do a little bit more than this, and this doesn't. It just doesn't. We'll go with a 2.3. Bone Picker Scourge, 2 and a black for a 2/2 Phyrexian imp that flies, and it also has Corrupted. As long as the opponent has 3 or more poison counters, this creature has Death Touch and Lifelink. Death Touch and Lifelink, not terrible on a flyer, no less. So that's pretty cool. But getting your opponent corrupted is a little easier said than done. It's possible in Infect decks and Poison Storm decks, but if you're in those decks, you don't really care about getting your opponent corrupted. You care about getting your opponent dead through the poison counters. And so you're going to move into strategies that will maximize the amount of poison counters, the amount of proliferate effects that you can get. And a card like this really only slows down your game plan. That, hey, I have 3 poison counters on them, I can stop. It made a little bit more sense in Phyrexian LV1. In limited, hey, you only have so many cards that give them poison counters. But good news, if I have 3 of those, then I don't have to worry about building it. The rest of my deck doesn't have to give them poison counters, because now my limited deck is able to turn on a number of different effects, and it makes them better. That's great in limited. It's a fun limited mechanic. In Commander, in Pauper, in any other set that has poison counters on it and is constructed, those mechanics are much worse, because you just want to use the poison counters to kill the opponent. So I can't give this a very good score. A 3 mana flyer with Death Touch and Lifelink is great on the high end, but when do you get that, and what sacrifices do you have to make in your deck to be able to make that work? And in this, you'd have to play a bunch of poison stuff, and then as we mentioned, you're kind of you're stretching yourself a little too thin on what your deck does, and that's a pretty easy way to lose. I will this really ends up being a trap, and I've got to give it a bad score despite liking it generally. I like the art, I like the creature types, I like the potential of this thing. I do have this Bone Picker Scourge. And I like this art too. I think that's a cool looking card there, but the card itself not particularly good. I'll give this a 1.4, and that's probably even a little too high. Reclaim the Waste, single green mana for a sorcery with Kicker 3. You can pay an additional 3 mana as you cast this spell. For 1 mana, you search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, and put it in your hand, and then shuffle. But if you kicked the spell, you search your library for 2 basic land cards instead of 1. That's cool. I mean, I know this is the Pauper channel, but I have a commander deck that wants to play all those kind of Sky Shroud claims and all those 4 mana ramp 2 spells. And does this go in there? No, because it doesn't put them on the battlefield. But it also doesn't go in there because that's a specific deck. It's that what do they call it? Like 2-4-7 deck. Yeah, that's what they call it. There, where you're trying to play a very consistent early game that allows you to ramp into just having big things in the late game or the mid game, so you never have to play many 2 mana spells at all. Like it's a deck where basically everything's a 4 mana spell except for your commander, and so you can, and your command is a mana dork, so you're able to play your lands on curve, use your commander to pump up to 4 mana, use one of those 4 mana ramp spells that ramps you 2, and then now you're off to the races where you are just casting Haymaker after Haymaker, and it's super fun. It's a really cool way to build a commander deck. But this is a Pauper channel, so let's talk about Pauper. And I don't think this card is especially good. It's a Lay of the Land that if you pay 4 times as much as a Lay of the Land, you can get 2 Lay of the Lands. Nah. Nah, I don't think so. I'll give this thing a... I think I gotta dip into the ones, unfortunately. Like we have Lay of the Land effects that are... No, it's better than a 1. I think Lay of the Land itself is probably a 1. And this thing does have potentially more value on it, so that's something. But we just have better ones that you get played now. 2.1, I guess. Next card, Warthog Classic. It's Warthog. What do you want from me? It's 1 and double green for a 3/2 boar with Swamp Walk. It was in Visions, and then for 6th edition they went, ooh, this is too good for common. We got to bump it up. I've mentioned this on the show before. I kind of like these cards. I have a bit of an affinity with them in that I like these off-color walkers, land walkers. Even though this is a green card, it swamp walks, so it gets through on players who are playing black. Usually you end up seeing creatures with land walk abilities will generally have the land walk of their color. So a red card will have mountain walk, or a green card will have forest walk, that kind of thing. Especially with blue. You see blue have island walk a lot. And the idea is like, oh, of course, they're fish. So the fish get to swim freely in the ocean, and they'll be able to come out and hit the opponent without them seeing it. It's understandable. But they're not particularly good. And I think these are slightly better. I don't think this card is good. I'm not saying that. But these cards are slightly better in that they are kind of hosing an opposing color. You don't have to play them in the mirror. You can play them in other decks. And I think generally you'll find that you don't play the mirrors, the color mirrors, as often. And black is a very popular color in Pauper and in lots of formats, for sure. Black is a very highly played color, so having something that will be able to sneak in on black is kind of nice. But black also has a lot of creature removal that will just murder this guy. In fact, using the card Murder, it can literally murder this guy. And, I don't think a 3/2 that costs you 3 double pips, in fact, of the 3. And that's not going to do much. This is not going in your sideboard, even if you are playing against a opponent that plays black. Even if you were in a meta game that is heavily black, that you see in your LGS, it's everybody's playing black decks, you still don't play this card. You can play plenty of other cards that would hose black specifically, even in green. But this is probably not one of them. We'll give this a 2. I think we can give it a 2. Scrap Diver Serpent. We've just did this card recently, and it was okay. Not great. Fertilid's Favors, 3 and a green for an instant. Target player searches their library for a basic land card, puts it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffles. Then you put 2 +1/+1 counters on up to one target artifact or creature. It's kind of nice. You ramp and pump at instant speed, no less. That's really nice. You can do this on your opponent. You can use it as a combat trick, but it's a combat trick that's also ramping you, so you're even stronger for the next turn, your next turn. I kind of like that. It is one of those cases where it's a little awkward. Did we talk about it yesterday or was it earlier today? I do these in batches, so it's tough to tell sometimes. There was a blue card that did a bunch of stuff and it had bargain on it, but it only kind of works when you have the whole scenario set up. And I think this one is a little bit different in that you can always ramp and you can always put plus and plus encounters on your creatures. So like this one's better. Yeah, you're right. It is better, but the problem here is I want to save this card in my hand so I can use it as a combat trick. But I also want to play this card as quickly as I can so I can get the ramp. And you see that that's a problem. There's that friction of when do I play this card? The ramp is probably going to help me over the course of the game, so I really should play it early, but that loses out on a lot of the value of the card of being able to put the counters on at instant speed, which can really mess up an opponent. So if you do have the perfect scenario, great. Your opponent swings in on turn 4, thinking that they're safe and thinking that you're just going to be able to chump block. And you play this, you get to ramp, and you block their creature and kill their creature and probably keep yours. That's perfect. How often is that happening? How often is your opponent attacking with just the right size creature on turn 4, and it has to be on turn 4, now you've really lost the value on this. That's a bit of a problem. I want to be able to ramp earlier, so I'll probably play even cheaper ramp spells, and then I can play combat tricks that will also be cheaper, because they're now separate cards, and I can play them when they are appropriate. So having a card that says, well, you get to do both, that's great, but now it limits the scenario that I can play it in even more, and that's not as good. So while I appreciate this card, I also appreciate the idea that it's a callback to Fertilid, which is a creature that gets +1/+1 counters, and then you can remove those counters to go and find basic lands. That kind of does Fertilid stuff all in a single card in a slightly different way. So I appreciate the flavor that's there. But the card itself, it's okay. It's all right. I'll give it a 2.6, but probably not quite as high as you might initially think by reading the card. Defender of Law, 2 and a white. Have we done this one before? We've definitely done this one before. It's okay. Protection from red, flash, those are all kind of fun things. Maybe you put it in a sideboard against red, but probably not. I don't know. It's okay. We'll skip it, and we'll go to Jared of the Closed Fist. 3, a red, a green, and a green. So Gruul plus a green for a 6/5 legendary creature, Human Knight, originally from Legends, but it has been downshifted in this Mastered Edition 3 set. So hey, move over. Move over, Leonardo Big Brother. Move over, Orokusaki. Move over, Spider-Man Webslinger. We've got this legendary creature breaking the format, right? I'm going to say a 6-mana 6/5 with no other abilities and no way to cheapen that cost. Maybe not so great. I'm going to say you probably have better cards to ramp into in Gruul. We have a whole deck archetype that is Gruul ramp, and I'll tell you, this is not at the top end of it. Fun art, and it is unique. It's a legendary creature at common, way before the other legendary creatures at common, but it's not good. It's not good at all. This is I think this is just a 1, right? It's way too expensive, too many pips. It is. I don't understand old Magic design, and I think a lot of people don't. But this one specifically, I don't understand. You have to know as a designer, it's harder to play a card with multiple colors. It's easy to play monocolor decks. You just gotta you know that from playing one game of Magic. You go, oh, I don't have the right color. I can't cast this guy. So you have to know. I the card has to be better to justify paying that cost. And yet they didn't. Like there's so many of these legends in Legends that suck. Like they have giant mana costs. They take lots of different colors and they're terrible. You get the Elder Dragons. Are those actually in Legends? I can't remember. Like Nicol Bolas. Which is the, there you go. That's the original one. Yeah, they're from Legends. Like Nicol Bolas is one of the better ones, and yet he costs 8 mana, and there's so many pips, and you still have to pay all this mana to do it. And he at least has a decent ability on him, and that is just not the case for most of these legends. Most of them are like Gerard, sorry, and they're terrible. I don't get it. I don't get how you could make cards that bad and not understand that they should actually be really strong because they cost a lot and they cost a very difficult amount of mana to a difficult kind of mana to cast. Whatever. Yeah. Anyway, it's a 1. Was that our bonus card? You know what? Screw it. I'll do another one where it's a fun Friday. Orcish Mechanics, 2 and a red for a 1/1 orc. You can tap it and sacrifice an artifact, and this creature deals 2 damage to any target. That's kind of not bad, right? There's lots of little artifacts that you'll have on the board that you can easily sacrifice. Map tokens and clue tokens and synthesizer. You know, you could the synthesizer's a pretty good one. That leaves the battlefield, so you sacrifice it, you get the leaves the battlefield trigger, you get to exile a card that you potentially get to play that turn. You do 2 damage to an opponent or to an opponent's creature. Yeah, that's fun, but it's also a 3 mana 1/1. That's a little tough to take on that one. But you could. There's better things you can do with those things, but you could do that. I'll be generous. I'll give it a 2.5. I think it is kind of fun, but it's not particularly good. All right, that'll wrap up the week. We'll see you next time on Common Knowledge. Bye.